the age-old saying that if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And certainly in Hawaii, we sure need to learn about that, because quite often in Hawaii, we see people here getting cheated out of their money. And today we have one of the state's top experts, certainly, to talk to us about white-collar crime and investment fraud in Hawaii and how to keep your money safe. Tom Simon, Special Agent from the FBI.
Thank you so much for having me on, Malia.
Sure. Maybe you can tell people, just to help educate all of us, I know we worry about, our moms or dads and certainly a lot of elderly people, and then also there's just, a lot of us can just easily get scammed. So what is it that people should know about in terms of the top scams that are going on in Hawaii right now?
Right now we're experiencing about a 4-year epidemic of investment fraud in Hawaii, and that means people coming to our state from the outside or people who actually live here and offering investment products with unusually high rates of return coupled with low risk. The people of Hawaii have been giving their money to these scams only to find out that there actually is no investing happening. It's just the bad guy putting the money in his pocket and then disappearing.
So we've seen you use that phrase quite a bit. In fact, that's where I got it from. If it's too good to be true, you tell people that all the time in the news. So what are you? Can you outline some of the frauds that people should be concerned about? What is a key? I mean, we get these emails that have all these weird spacings and strange names and things like that. But what are some of the signs that people can look for?
Well, the emails that you get with presenting these opportunities, that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, right? Folks, right at this point in 2013 ought to realize that if you get an email opportunity and it's not somebody you're already doing business with, best to just delete that email. Don't respond. Don't engage with these people. Don't try to find out more, or you're just going to end up on some list of people who are suckers who respond to these things. The more insidious investment opportunities here and scams come from the people you already know, the cousin or the person you meet at the potluck or the friend of a friend who's going to offer you, and this is the key, high rates of return coupled with low risk. Because, Malia, there's no such thing in real life in the world of investing of high rates of return and low risk. They might as well be telling you to invest in a unicorn.
Well, give us some examples. Maybe you can outline some of the scams that you see or the investment frauds that you see, and then maybe share with us some of the specific examples, if you can, about what some of the cases are that we've seen in Hawaii.
Sure. I look back a few years ago. We had a fellow by the name of Patrick Rakotananahare. He was from Madagascar, lived in Florida, actually came to Hawaii and began presenting investment seminars at the Plaza Club right over there on Bishop Street. Filled the room full of people. He said he was a Forex trader. He said he had developed a proprietary system for trading foreign currencies, yen, euros, dollars, to generate high rates of investment return, and he wanted to share this with the people of Hawaii. So Patrick began offering the people in that room 6% a week on their money, and with a minimum investment of $30,000, and then a handful of people invested. And you know what happened? They began getting 6% a week on their money. What they didn't know is that the whole thing was a Ponzi scheme. And what a Ponzi scheme means is that you're going to receive investment returns for a while, but those investment returns are not being derived from any income-producing or business activity. They're being derived from your own money and the money of other investors. So you give me $100, I'm going to give you $10 back. I'm going to put a big hunk of that in my pocket, and you're going to feel a nice warm feeling because you just received a 10% rate of return. So this fellow Patrick begins actually wiring people 6% a week on their money. You know what happened next? The Coconut Wireless went to work. Everybody started telling their friends, neighbors, cousins, and family and aunties that their ship has come in. They met this smart, weird guy from Florida who's now giving them 6% a week. People were showing up to the Pop Warner football games with their bank statements to show that the 6% a week was arriving, and then it began to spread virally. $10.6 million later, 100 Hawaii families were victimized by this, and Patrick Rakotananahare basically stopped paying the money and stood in Florida spending their money. I ended up going down to Florida, interrogating him, getting a confession. He was arrested shortly thereafter. We brought him here to Hawaii to face the charges, and he pleaded guilty.
I'm just impressed you can say his name.
It's a long name.
And not only that you can say so fast.
Well, you got used to it. It was a good year of my life investigating that case right when I first arrived here 4 years ago. And it was shocking to me, the gall that someone would come into this island, this kind of peaceful community, and take people's money. And these people were good people who had worked hard for that money. And many of them actually lost their homes as a result of this investment.
We see that quite a bit here where people are just so trusting, or they have a gambling nature, How do you kind of address that? Because are you seeing more and more of this happening? Is it increasing or staying about the same?
I wish I wasn't this busy. I wish I could somehow get the word out there to your viewers and to the people of Hawaii that high rates of return with low risk should set off bells, and people need to investigate before they invest. But it continues, and it's job security for me, but it really breaks my heart because I spend most of my time each week talking to the victims, the people who've lost everything because they chose to invest their money with a con man, and it really breaks my heart. I don't know what it is about Hawaii, what's in the air, what's in the water that makes these things so pervasive. I think we do have a trusting nature here, and I think that's a good thing, right? We can merge in traffic here. It's the only place in America that lets you do that. We get along with each other. There's a perception that we're all trapped here on an island together, and we ought to not treat our neighbors as predator and prey. But sometimes maybe that makes us let our guard down here, and we don't ask the right questions. We don't challenge people when they tell us something that just might be nonsense.
And then part of it, I think, is people have big families here a lot of times, and they might rely on a family member that says, this is a great deal, and so on.
Exactly, and that's the coconut wireless I was talking about earlier. As soon as it begins to spread from one person to another, and remember, these people are getting investment returns as far as they know. What they don't know is that it's just a Ponzi scheme. The reason the bad guy is giving them investment returns is for that exact reason, that they go out and become their marketing arm of this scam.
Now, recently in the news, you were in the news for it was a similar scam. It was a Ponzi scheme, I think. And this was the man that was in the Army Reserve, I believe?
Yes, a guy by the name of Jason Pasqua, a Kaneohe resident. He's since relocated to Arizona. It's important to note that he's been charged with the crime, but he has not yet pleaded guilty to that crime. That may happen at the end of May. So if we're going to talk about that case, I want to make sure everybody knows that he's innocent until proven guilty, and what I'm talking about are just allegations.
Definitely. That sounds good. So maybe you can outline that case, and then we can move on to some others.
Sure. He had a big network of friends and family because he was the head of the Filipino Chamber of Commerce historically. He was on the Japanese Chamber of Commerce. He ran for public office. He was an Army reservist. He was kind of a mover and shaker in the nightclub scene. And what Jason did is he went to all the people he knew and he told them that he had created this business, J2 Marketing Solutions. And he's alleged to have offered investment returns of like 15 to 30% within just a few weeks' time, indicating that he was going to be putting on celebrity events and rock concerts in Las Vegas, Nevada, and here in Honolulu. And we're dealing with another 25 to 30 people right now who invested $1.4 million with him, many of whom have lost everything.
And we see this, he's a good example because, I've talked to some people that know him, and they said, he really put himself in the community. I mean, you said the Filipino Chamber of Commerce, the Japanese Chamber of Commerce. He was, I think, and before that even, he was in the JCs. He was born and raised here, I think, from what I read, or at least grew up here. And so a lot of people knew him, and so kind of as he made himself more and more in the community, more and more people trusted him.
And you have to wonder what went wrong. And I can't speak for him, right? I don't know what's inside his head or his heart, or if at some point he wanted to do a legitimate business and it took a turn for the worse, or if he just thought this was an opportunity to steal from people. I don't know, but he was a kind of beloved guy here in town, and not a guy who'd been in trouble. He was an Army reservist. He was giving his time to his country to serve, and so people had a real sense of comfort in doing business with Jason. But again, the rates of return didn't make sense, and he was guaranteeing these rates of return with no risk, with personal guarantees. And so once you hear that, red lights and sirens should go off in your head.
Now, we've had some neighbor island cases as well. I think there was a Maui couple and some Kauai people on Kauai, maybe one or two people. There was a man in Kauai that was into the entertainment scene, right? Maybe
Peter Heckman?
Peter Heckman.
Boy, the Heckman story, that's a crazy one. I wasn't the original investigator on that case, but I inherited it when I moved here 4 years ago. And Peter Heckman was a music producer on Kauai, and he had a music studio there, and it was doing very poorly. And he began offering investment opportunities, indicating that he could refurbish Apple computers and make them into the high-speed Apple computers, and he would give you incredible rates of return. Again, 15, 20% on your money in just a few months. He started to do that. He wasn't making any money doing that. His studio was failing. He began paying off new investors with money from old investors. paying off old investors with money from new investors, which by definition makes it a Ponzi scheme. And he brought in over $1 million. With Heckman, though, what was weird about that case is that he disappeared into thin air once he learned that the criminal charges were coming, and he was a fugitive since 2007. We learned through an undercover investigation that I ran that he was hiding out in the island of Bali, Indonesia. And that was significant because we don't have an extradition treaty with Indonesia. He could sit there waving to us on the beach and there'd be nothing we can do about it. We tried to lure him back to the United States with a kind of harebrained undercover idea that didn't work, saying that we had a rock band we wanted him to produce in Saipan, and he just saw right through that. And then eventually we did a giant press rollout, because I'm also the media spokesperson for the FBI, to get the word out there on the internet and social media that this is a guy who's wanted. By that point, he had been running a fairly successful music label in Bali and called Raining Heart Records. And I think he just felt that the publicity surrounding his crimes here in Hawaii, and now in this world of the internet, had ruined him, and there was no way anyone was going to want to do business with him. So he felt he wanted to turn a chapter of his life and come in to surrender himself. And so a few weeks back, he flew to Honolulu, accompanied by the FBI agent stationed in our Jakarta, Indonesia embassy, and we placed him under arrest at the airport, and a couple days ago he just pleaded guilty in federal court. So not a fan of what he did, but I do like the fact that he's willing to put this behind him and face the music in court. That's all we ever ask.
Now, you really use social media to help you, not only the media, but also you had I think, was it the FBI having on Twitter and on Facebook and getting the media to publish these posters that you produced?
That was a new idea for us, and the idea of, instead of just harnessing kind of the traditional media and putting out wanted posters in the post office, to get it out there on Facebook and get it out there on the FBI's Twitter page, which has hundreds of thousands of followers, probably more so this week with everything else going on in the news. And we really thought that we could kind of capture the public's imagination. At the end of the day, it was Heckman himself who realized that he had gone viral and it was time to give himself up.
Now, there was a couple on, I think it was Maui, a couple, I think, and they were in Las Vegas. I just remember their pictures, two blonde-haired women, and
the Griggs.
The Griggs, okay.
Yes, it was Perry and Rochelle Griggs. We had some victims on Maui, but a lot of victims were here on Oahu.
Okay.
That was a crazy case. Perry Griggs went to prison around 9/11 for running a Ponzi scheme in California. When he went to prison, he found himself to be locked up in Las Vegas, Nevada, at a prison there with about 100 inmates from the state of Hawaii. And he had an idea while he was in prison that he would convince them that he was this high-powered commodities trader and that he was this millionaire guy who'd been locked up for tax evasion. He wasn't telling these Hawaii inmates that he'd actually been locked up for running an investment scam. Anyway, so Perry Griggs convinces these Hawaii inmates that he's this millionaire commodities trader, and he says, listen, I know how tough it must be for your families back home in Hawaii with you locked up here. Let me take care of them. If they invest their money with me, I could trade it in commodities from here inside the prison walls and make enough money so your family could end up sustaining life, and in about 5 years I can end up getting them $1 million from my trading. And we had dozens and dozens of Hawaii families giving money to Perry Griggs for that very purpose. And his wife, Rochelle Griggs, was kind of running the operation of the Ponzi scheme on the outside with the bank accounts, and they just took the money and stole it. And he got out of prison, and then they disappeared into thin air, and we had a nationwide fugitive hunt for them, and we eventually caught them later that year in Arizona and brought them back to Hawaii to face the charges, and they pleaded guilty.
You have to be pretty gutsy to start stealing from criminals.
That was an insane case for me. My phone's ringing off the hook with nice people, victims here in Hawaii, who were telling me that they lost their money in a Ponzi scheme. And I'd say, okay, well, tell me what happened. They said, well, I invested this money with this guy in prison. And he goes, and then he wasn't paying my returns. I go, can we back up a little bit?
I know.
You invested money with a guy in prison. What made you think that was a good idea?
Exactly.
And so the story kind of unfolded from there. And the victims, a lot of people weren't very sympathetic to them, but the victims had done nothing wrong. The victims were family members, aunties, mothers, cousins of people who happened to be in prison. And when you have a family member who's sitting in prison, maybe you don't have the same dim view of prisoners that other people have. And so these folks trusted the idea that Perry Griggs was really something special, when in fact he was just a thief.
Wow, it's a whole new audience to scam. Amazing.
I don't think we've ever had a case in America where a man sitting in prison for running a Ponzi scheme actually successfully runs a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme.
It's quite amazing.
It was.
Now, I remember hearing you speak. I've heard you speak many times to different groups, kind of warning them about the things that we're talking about now. And some of the cases you've had actually have something similar in that they have the scammers scamming another scammer who's already scammed somebody else who scammed somebody else, and it just keeps going and going.
Yeah, it's a weird phenomenon here, especially in Hawaii, where we have con men conning con men here,
yes.
where just multiple layers of scammers are stealing money from each other, ultimately stealing money from the people. Example, we talked about that guy Patrick Rukutunanahare from Madagascar. We had a guy here in Kaneohe named Albert Perkins who was offering certificates of deposit from various banks around from the mainland that were going to pay off 18% a year to people in Hawaii. And he brought in over $1 million, and then he took the lion's share of the money that he brought in and invested it in that Ponzi scheme run by Patrick Rukutunanahare. And so, when you look at the victim list in that case, it just sort of makes you scratch your head that these two guys are both serving time in federal prison, both the bad guy, his victim, who happens to be a bad guy because he stole money from other victims. So just crazy.
Now, you've had Army reservists here, and then also, haven't you had a beauty queen that was in trouble? Or it was somebody that, I'm trying to remember, that was one of the scams that I remember you talking about.
Beauty queen.
Or somebody, I guess, just trying to remember now. You've had so many good cases that...
It's been a busy 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember a beauty queen, though. You'd think I'd remember the beauty queen.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe that was an HPD case. I know they had a beauty queen in Kailua who was stealing from, doing kind of a similar thing in Ponzi schemes and things like that.
We had a woman, she was a woman named Kapua Kiulanui.
That might be it, maybe, yeah.
And she was, her husband was serving time with Perry Griggs, and she offered her own investment program, not telling people that she was really going to be investing the money with a man in prison, and she brought in over $1 million herself and used a good bit of it on herself, but then also gave the lion's share of the money to Perry Griggs. I actually feel a little bit sorry for Kapua, one, because she helped me out a lot, and she was with the Perry Griggs case, and she actually believed in Perry Griggs, and she thought that Perry was going to actually pay her money that she could use to pay off her people. Where Kapua went wrong is that she was telling people that she had been touched by Jesus Christ himself with the ability to trade commodities. She was actually forgetting to tell them that her partner was not in fact Jesus, but it was this guy Perry Griggs sitting in prison. So that's really where she went wrong. It was a sin of omission rather than commission.
That is definitely the person I was thinking of. I don't know why I thought she was a beauty queen. But
lovely lady.
Yeah. But, well, okay, so people, think they might have been scammed, or they think there might be a scam. How do you tell them to kind of investigate it? How should they look into it? I get people calling me all the time saying, hey, a company from Russia told me if I invest $5,000. I mean, these are normal business people that are asking me these things.
I think the first thing you have to understand is that the FBI's job is not to screen your investment opportunities, okay? I don't know anything about good investing. All I know about is bad investing, okay? So, but if you feel like you've been defrauded, or if you feel like there's someone out there in our community who is currently offering investment opportunities that are a fraud, give the FBI a call. 808-566-4300 is our telephone number, and we'd like to look into it further. Now, the FBI should not be your final stop if you're not getting the love you deserve from us, because the Honolulu Police has an excellent fraud squad right now, run by a Detective John McCarthy.
He's been on our show.
Oh, really? He's amazing. The guy's running circles around us. He's doing so many great cases here. And then the state has both the Attorney General's office and the DCCA Securities Enforcement Branch, which are this seasoned group of people that I've been teaming up with a lot lately who know investment fraud. That's all they do, is investigate investment and securities fraud here in Hawaii. So you have a lot of outlets. The big problem, though, is that for a lot of the people here, and perhaps it's some kind of local culture phenomenon, and as you guessed, I'm not from here, so I can't really be the sociologist, is a lot of the folks here, when they get ripped off, feel a great deal of shame, and they don't really want to talk and cooperate to law enforcement because they feel bad about what they've done with kind of their family's financial legacy. Some people also feel very misguided that if they cooperate with the FBI or with the police or law enforcement, then somehow that's going to inhibit their ability to get their money back. I'm here today to tell you that if you cooperate with law enforcement, that is your best shot of getting your money back. As soon as you make that investment with a con man, no matter what he's telling you about how the check's in the mail, it's just not true.
So they give you a call, and is there a guideline for, I was ripped off of $3,000, so I should go to the police, or I was ripped off of $25,000 or $250,000? What's kind of a guideline for people?
We don't have a solid guideline because every single one of these cases I've talked about began with one person who lost some amount of money to a con man, and then we began to look into it, and then the next thing you know, it's 106 people and $10.6 million. So it would be difficult for me to sit here and say that, hey, if you lost 10,000 bucks, don't call me, call the police. That's not really the case. But if it involves interstate activity, if it involves a wire transfer from your bank account on the mainland to a con man here, or if the con man's on the mainland, then it really falls into the federal purview, and I'd like to get the call on that. At the end of the day, though, we're probably not going to prosecute it because federally, unless the dollar amounts are fairly substantial, into the six figures, let's say, and if there's several different victims out there. We're not really working one-victim scams only because we have too much work and not enough folks doing it.
Well, we have a few minutes left on the show, about 7 minutes, and do you think, is there anything else that people should know, or should we talk about some of the things that happen to businesses here too, because you also speak to business owners about some of the things that they should watch out for? I'm
happy to talk about anything you want to talk about. I'm trying to think of anything else that I need to impart. Just again, high rates of return, low risk, let the bells go off.
If it's too good to be true, it is.
Absolutely. Investigate before you invest.
Right. I know I have, and even I think some of the foreign companies that are targeting people here. I got a call from a friend who has a business, and he said, well, this Russian company wants to sign me up, and I said, well, why don't you do business with somebody in America? I mean, it's a little harder, don't you think, to get your money back if something goes wrong overseas?
Yeah, and at that point, our hands are kind of tied also, right? Like Russia's not exactly throwing their doors open for me to go and bring back con men from there who stole money from folks here in Hawaii. And so if you're going to do business with a foreign nation and invest your money with a foreign nation or put your money there, you really got to investigate, because bottom line is if you sent your money to Nigeria for any reason and you're not getting your money back, there's not a gosh darn thing I'm going to be able to do about it here.
Now, you've talked a lot about the individuals here and how they can protect their money and protect themselves and their families. And do you see this, that business owners or businesses are making the same kind of mistakes, or are there other things that they're doing that they should watch out for?
The small business owners here, their biggest risk is their own employees. We see a lot of embezzlement cases here, where a small business owner has this trusted group of employees, not a great number of employees always, and then they're shocked to find out that one of those employees had been stealing from them for years. And so those stories always break my heart, because I have a lot of love for the small business community, right? They are the engine that drives Hawaii. And when I see one of them going under because one of their employees robbed them blind, it saddens me, and I want to work that case.
It's almost like a family member hurting them, especially with the small businesses where they've been working there for a while.
And that's what they always tell me, right?
Yeah.
I always talk about, as soon as I'm doing the victim interview with the business owner, saying, tell me about this employee who you believe stole from you. They're like, oh, they were just like family. They were at my daughter's wedding. I trusted them. I was able to sign blank checks and make sure they had them so they could pay the bills of the company. And I go, well, that was part of the problem.
Right.
And, you can have a good relationship with your employees and trust your employees, but still have the internal controls in place to stop an embezzlement before it happens.
I know you've talked about that, and one of the ways I think you said was don't have the same person doing one thing as another, kind of have different jobs for
what we
people.
call segregation of duties. The idea that the person who has access to the assets of your company, in this case the checkbook, should be a different person than the person who maintains the accounting records. So and I hear small business owners say, I only have a few employees. How am I going to segregate duties? If you have more than one person at your company, you can make sure that the person who's writing the checks is not the person who's reconciling that bank account. As soon as that becomes the same person, there's an opportunity for fraud.
Right, because basically they could just write themselves a check or say it's for something else.
They do all the time.
Right,
and
right.
Yeah, this is what I investigate. This is how I spend 50 hours a week with your tax dollars. And so I'm not here to chastise the small business owners, but I do want to make sure they can understand that there are easy, cost-effective things they can do to make sure they're not victimized.
Now, are there any kind of computer systems or anything like that that you tell people to use, or it's just pretty much segregating?
Well, again, I'm not a businessman, so I'm not here to tell you how to run your business and how to run your back office. But I do know as a CPA that segregation of duties is pretty basic stuff. The idea of separating the asset from separating the accounting records. That can be done with QuickBooks. That can be done with any number of accounting programs out there. And the idea of reconciling your bank account every month. And if you get your checks back from the bank, turn those checks over, see where they're being endorsed. If your check going to Hawaiian Electric is being cashed at the liquor store down the street, you got a problem.
Right, right. Well, what are some of the other scams that you might see people that own businesses getting involved with? It's pretty much just always theft?
No, there's advanced fee schemes.
I did have a friend that had that happen to her.
And a lot of them are project financing schemes. Somebody has a great business idea here in Hawaii, and a lot of small business owners have some very creative ideas, but they're not getting any love from the banks. They're not getting the capital they need to launch their new small business. And so what they do is they put themselves out there on the internet saying, I have this small business idea. I just need $3-4 million to make that happen. Next thing you know, they're getting emails from people saying, we have a funding source involving prime bank guarantees or a medium-term note trading program. All you have to do is kick in $100,000 and we'll be able to trade that for you and then get you the money you need, the $2-4 million, so you can actually begin your small business idea. Those things are nearly always a scam.
It sounds tempting. I mean,
it is tempting, right? And these are people who've been rejected by all the legitimate funding sources in the world, and so they're getting desperate, and they know in their hearts that they have a good idea that they want to share with the world, so they end up falling for these advanced fee schemes involving project financing. It again, breaks my heart.
Entrepreneurs are so optimistic. I can say that because I am one. We eternally think we have a good idea and that it's going to work.
And many of them are great ideas, but oftentimes these people don't know the backroom finance stuff on how to actually run a business to keep themselves from getting zinged.
Well, I think that's absolutely true, and I think that a friend of mine I was going to tell you about, she has a healthcare business, and what happened was somebody would send her a check ahead of time and said, you know, this is for all these treatments,
yes.
and then they said, oh, we can't make it there, so can you reimburse us for however many? And so she sent them a check back, and it ended up being a scam, so she lost all this money.
Our legal community here, our lawyers are getting burned by that one a lot, where someone will hire them, say, I'm overseas in Korea, I want you to handle my divorce, here's $50,000 in a check, and then the attorney will be quite honest and say, listen, I only really need a $5,000 retainer, and they'll say, okay, just deposit that $50,000 check and wire me the $45,000 back. And the attorney wires the $45,000 back only to find out, are you sitting down, the $50,000 check was counterfeit.
You know, you wouldn't think attorneys would get that scam, but it shows you that anybody can.
Right, but again, they work on a business where retainers are paid on the front end for business to be done later, which is sort of the perfect storm for that type of fraud. I don't blame the attorneys. They should have the right to trust their clients.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can sum it up for us, the final thing about what people should look for, how people should, you know, contact you if they need to.
Again, if you feel like you've been scammed, okay, if you feel like a scam has happened and you've lost money, give the FBI a call at 808-566-4300. We have people 24/7 who are willing to take your complaint. If for some reason you're not comfortable doing business with the FBI, call the police, call the Securities Enforcement Branch of the DCCA. There's plenty of folks out there in local government and federal government here who are interested in helping you out.
You know, and the DCCA is a good outlet as well. I know the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, for people that don't know.
Yeah.
And we get quite a few notices from them about busting a mortgage fraud or doing things like that, where they help people as well.
I've been embedded with them. I share time with them, between them and in our FBI office, and I just find myself so impressed with the investigators they have on staff. They are some sharp young investigators.
So we have the resources here, and we have the brains. And
Well, I can't take credit for that, but there's a lot of brains to go around.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for joining us today. I'm really happy that you're able to come here and tell people about what to watch out for, and hopefully we see less people getting scammed in the future.
I
It'd be
hope so, too.
wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. This has been News Behind the News. Aloha.